Welcome in, special edition of the Fright Club podcast. We're excited. We're going to focus on a brand new movie that everybody seems to be excited about. We were certainly excited about. And this is the Fright Club podcast. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we welcome in our buddy, returning special guest director, Jeremiah Kipp.
Hey.
Hey, you guys. Really happy to see you guys again.
Yeah, great to see you. And congratulations already on the early success of the
Thank you.
Mortuary Assistant. Just came out this week. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm in a bubble, but I'm hearing a lot of good things. I'm hearing a lot of good buzz.
It's been nice, like I've never had a feature open in like it's over 200 movie theaters across the USA, and of course you're nervous. It's like I've known of indie film screenings where like there have been movies that I've gone to that are great films, like when I saw Late Night with the Devil, it was like me and one other guy, and that's a phenomenal film.
Yes,
great festival run, brilliant
Yes.
reviews, and then on Shudder it was gangbusters and is a modern classic.
Yeah.
But it was I was a little nervous going into this theatrical run, saying like, wow, are we going to be at when Brian and I go to the movies on Friday the 13th, is it going to be us in one row and like a friends and family screening essentially? You just really have no idea. All you can do is make the best film you can and put it out into the world and hope that it's received in the spirit from which it was made. But that said, it has been like, we've only been out for one day. We opened on Friday the 13th, which was incredibly cool. And then just hearing reports back from different cities like Boston and Philadelphia and Austin, Texas, and that hearing that an entire screening in San Diego got sold out and they had to open another theater to accommodate the fans. It makes me feel like people who love the game are able to come out of come AMC and find Regal and find the theaters that are showing a movie based on a game that they love. And so far, it's been a very warm response. So we've been very pleased.
And just in case, I'm not sure we even said it's the Mortuary Assistant. Have we said the title?
Did we?
I don't know when.
Well,
It's the Mortuary Assistant, and as you said, it's based on the popular video game. And Brian, that you said that you've gone to some of the screenings with, is the video game creator.
That's right. Brian Clark developed the game. So he was an indie solo developer who, made this game essentially as a prototype. Like he did like one scene from the game while he was making another game and just kind of put it online. And the response to it immediately was yes, more. So then he built it out into a fuller game that went viral and was a gigantic success. The game is extremely scary. It makes people jump in their seats. Markiplier, who directed Iron Lung recently and made millions and millions of dollars, was a big fan of Mortuary Assistant and played it on his show. So it was one of those games where from just like one guy, one very talented, smart, creative person, like the game blew up. And thus Shudder and Epic Pictures Group decided this would make a good film. I think they were obviously cared about the fact that it made a lot of money, but then also the thing that is good about Mortuary Assistant that is comparable to something like The Last of Us. The Last of Us is like a 10 or 20 hour game, and you can play Mortuary Assistant like an hour and a half. But it does have like actual like narrative characters with story arcs that you can follow. It actually has a very cinematic mood and atmosphere. Like The Last of Us in its own way felt like a HBO series. So when it became an HBO series, it really made sense. And then with Mortuary Assistant, the idea of making that into an indie horror film was kind of a no-brainer because it just felt like in the gameplay, you were like, oh, I can see a movie in this, and based on Shudder and Epic's enthusiasm for my previous movie Slapface, they got me together with Brian to see if we would be a good marriage, and we loved each other immediately. He interviewed like 10 directors, and I think he liked my take on it. I think he was interested in the fact that I wanted to make a character-driven story about Rebecca Owens and pin the whole movie on her, and whatever actor was going to play Rebecca Owens, we were going to make it all about her. So off we ran. Like I got hired in 2022, and we developed the movie for like 2 years.
Wow.
We shot it early last year in Missouri doubling for New England, but there was there. And we had an amazing crew out in Missouri. Our producer, Cole Payne, set me up with the most astonishingly experienced and talented department heads. A lot of like during the pandemic, a lot of folks in the big, like Atlanta and New York and LA, like decided to move back home. So a ton of enormously talented people moved back to Missouri. For example, Kevin Duggan, who was our brilliant director of photography, like he was a camera operator for Dean Cundy, who shot John Carpenter's The Thing and Halloween and Jurassic Park. So very experienced and very talented DP who was gung-ho from the very start. You know, like the production designer who built that set from the ground up. Like everything in that mortuary you saw was made for the film. Like every wall, every door, every window was built from the ground up by an amazing team of builders and welders from Missouri on an amazing stage. But yeah, Chelsea Turner had just done a job with John Travolta directing it. So the pedigree of the people who were on the crew was beyond awesome. And I special mention, of course, to Norman Cabrera, who did all of our dead bodies and all of our monsters,
Yes,
which looks so realistic. And and I think it's because Norman cracked open his medical journals and like really wanted to get it right, because the pigmentation of the dead is very specific. But also, I mean, he's just a great artist. Like he was a protege of Rick Baker, worked on Guillermo del Toro movies, like. In the Key and Peele sketch, how they list all the gremlins, and it's like, what about vegetable gremlin? It's like, oh, Norman made vegetable gremlin. When we were sitting around the table, that was Norman. What about vegetable gremlin? So the Key and Peele sketch, if you watch it again, and it's like that was not unlike Rick Baker's workshop with all the people saying, "Well, throw out some ideas." They were going to do elephant gremlin, but it proved impossible. That's the only one that didn't make it into the movie.
Well, we were very honest in saying we're not gamers at all. I think the last video game I played was Frogger, and but we had so much fun with it. So when you approached it, how did you balance how much you wanted to satisfy the fans of the game with people that come to it with no knowledge of the game?
It's a great question, and I think it's the thing that you have to ask yourself when you're embarking on a video game to film adaptation. Because you can completely ignore the fans like they did on Super Mario Bros, where they said, let's just set it in the world of Blade Runner, or you can, and some people like that movie. I myself was like, I don't get it, but then I really liked Iron Lung by Markiplier, where, like, love that movie or hate it, it's told with such passion and such integrity, and I really like it. But he is extremely meticulously faithful to David Wachowski's game, where it's like every map that he's drawing, every little piece of the submarine, is like fans of the game can look at it and say, oh, I know exactly what that is. And I was of a belief that we wanted to honor we never wanted to do anything that would betray the game. So if we never wanted to impose a narrative element on top of the game. And I think the way that I chose to proceed was just make sure that the game creator, Brian Clark, was with me every step of the way. It was very validating by the fact that he said, I want Jeremiah to direct this movie, which already gave me enormous validation and support. And then we would talk about it a lot. And I would ask him, what are the important elements of the game that we must include? And when designing the set, he was there talking to us while we were making blueprints and three-dimensional floor plans. And we were saying, like, okay, the red lamp is there and this is there, but like, is it okay if we put the computer on the left side instead of the right? Stuff like that. And he said, well, because you've made the computer accurate to the game and the red lamp is accurate to the game, I don't think that anybody will cruise. I certainly won't by you flipping it to the other side of the room. And stuff like the layout of the hallways in the game creates a little more of a maze. But in our space, we said, Brian, would it be all right if we make one really long hallway so that we can play with the depth, like looking all the way down the hallway at something scary that might be on the other end? And he said, I understand why you're doing that. I agree. So I think that our key to validation was like Brian Clark, who became like one of my best friends, we really adore each other. Like, we and our partners went to the movie together, yesterday and at the premiere. Like before that, we celebrated, and after we celebrated, we really get along great. But the reason we became friends was because he was with us through every iteration of the script, and then all doing principal photography. He was there every day. In fact, he played the second dead body that you see in the film. It's an Easter egg in and of itself, because like players of the game can pick the Brian body if they want to. He does show up in the game as a dead person, just as a little loving homage to his fans. But we said, all right, we're going to double homage by just like making him that dead guy.
That's awesome.
And then he was there every day of principal photography, like I said, and he was there to chime in and give us insights. And, I would always like have him by the monitor with me, like just making sure that we were accurate to what he was depicting. If we had to change anything, I would say, Brian, like towards the end of the shoot, I was like, okay, we need to compress a little bit. Is there a solution that we can have during this sequence? And he's like, well, in the game, we do this, it's where it's the body sits up. And it's like, he's like, that is a direct shot and image from the game. So if we replace the thing we don't have time for that, then the fans will actually notice that bit from the game. But I also liked the fact that a horror movie audience won't care that that's from the game. It will just be an archetypal scary image that we can identify with and relate to. Now, my gaming experience before making this movie, like I would say that I'm not, I played Last of Us, and I loved Alien Isolation. And then but I didn't know as much about indie horror games. And once I played this one, I did do a deep dive and found so many great indie horror games that would make wonderful films, and Iron Lung, of course, like that game developer has made several games that would make amazing films. I'm sure they'll go into production.
Yeah.
But like I do think that the fact that Brian understood the game, because it was personal to him. He made it. It's his. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was like, well, my way in, if you agree with me, Brian, is that I'm going to personalize it all around Rebecca. Like I'm going to treat it as a character-driven film about Rebecca. I'm going to put any of my personal stuff as a filmmaker into Rebecca's story. And then we cast an actor that could carry the entire movie so powerfully, and that was Willa Holland.
Yeah,
who I'd seen. Most audiences know her from the TV show Arrow, based on the DC Comics Green Arrow, where she rises into being a hero. Younger audiences know her from the OC. She's been acting since she was 6 years old. I knew her more recently from a Beverly Cleary adaptation called Tiger Eyes, where she showed such nuance and sensitivity. That was one of those movies where Beverly Cleary was on the set every day, like with Willa. Like Willa was playing a Beverly Cleary protagonist. And that was nostalgic for me. I mean, it was a great book and made into a wonderful film. And reminded me of this because it was like that creator was on set with that director.
Right, exactly.
The Cleary world. And then more recently, Willa Holland was in a crime movie called The Dirty South, opposite the producer of Slapface, Mike Manning. And I'd seen her in that and loved her performance in it. I thought that her restraint was what made her powerful. She kind of plays it like she's not waiting for the audience to greet her and hug her. And that was actually what made me lean forward and be fascinated by her. I was like, oh, I find Willa Holland compulsively watchable and smart and complex and nuanced, and also just so believable in everything that she's doing. And Brian and I didn't want the movie to feel like, that comic book movie feeling of it being too, existing completely outside of reality. We knew Willa would ground it in naturalistic performance.
It was an amazing performance. And right from the opening scene, which we both loved, the autopsy scene, the back and forth between her and the mortician, where she was just like adequate. It's like she really wanted high marks, but at the same time, she didn't give him anything. There was never a thank you. There was, it's like she doesn't care about your opinion so much as she just cares to make sure she's doing it right. And it was a fascinating, really nuanced opening, which was also just incredibly well shot. Like the autopsy scene was just magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
The teeth and the goose flesh on the skin as she like slips the hose underneath it. Oh my God, it was such a great combination of like just the sort of mundane, rudimentary moments of an autopsy, plus when you don't do autopsies, just the grotesque nature of it. Like,
sure. Yeah, when we were doing the effects for the autopsy, when she's slicing into the body and putting, drawing blood out and pumping embalming fluid in through these tubes. Like we specifically got a medical lens called the probe lens that we attached to the camera that allowed us to get very, very, very close up on the bodies, so it rendered these wounds into being landscapes and put the effect right in the viewer's face. And that was a game to film adaptation, because in the game it doesn't do tight close up. Well, I mean, you see some, as you're doing the autopsy, it's all from a character's point of view. But in our movie, we were like, okay, we're going to do these rigorous close-ups. And I think that was our way of translating in the game in real time. You're doing step 1 to step 2 to step 3. Step 4 to step 5. In the movie, it's like, well, in movie language, what if it's step 1 is like boom, right up close, and by doing it in scene 1 is one of the first things that you see. It's an announcement. It's like, this is what our movie is going to be.
Yeah.
We are the Mortuary Assistant. We are in a mortuary. We will show the embalming, and tread with caution, all who enter here.
Right.
So we were very, very proud of those effects and wanted to highlight them. And I also found the actors who played the dead bodies commendable, because that is not an easy task.
No.
I did a dead body once in a movie years ago for a friend. And I was like, oh, how hard could it be? I'll just lie down and close my eyes. Maybe I'll take a nap. Not so. When I was doing the movie, they're like, all right, lay in this weird position and hold your eyes open and hold your breath. And I was like, whoa. So we were like, Willa and I and Brian were all very compassionate and Norman Cabrera, the special effects artist, were all very compassionate and considerate to the actors who played the dead people. And we really loved how much they cared about wanting to represent their dead people as characters and iconic in their own individual ways. I thought that was really fascinating and cool.
And they provide some really creepy, scary moments too. When they just move just a little bit, you have to feel like, I got to keep my eye over here because they're going to do something.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, the anticipation of future dread is like kind of the thing that I like to explore in my movies. And that was also the pitch that I made to the producers of the film, was like, that's what I'm going to lean hard into, is like that vibe of like something terrible is going to happen. And that's why whenever the dead bodies are doing any little thing, it just creates the sensation that something more is right around the corner.
Definitely.
I think, as you said, we're not gamers, but we do watch a lot of video game adaptation movies because we're film critics, and so you don't.
Sure.
We watch them all, and they are hard to make. And I've seen so many video game adaptations where. And I'm not asking for you. I'm just going to say Silent Hill, because I hate Silent Hill. And we're not suggesting that you do. The Silent Hill.
I can share my opinions about Silent Hill without hurting anybody's feelings. I think the games are phenomenal. Like they're like a vibe. They're way more like David Lynch movies than like the movies that have been made. They're strange and surreal, and you don't quite know what's happening. And the movies, they always try to explain it because they want to appeal to a mainstream audience. And those games make no concessions. But in a movie, they're explaining everything that's going on. And I think that that's the weakness of the Silent Hill movies, where I think they're all trying really hard to capture the feeling of the game. But I think that by becoming too, I don't know, they inject a mainstream sensibility into it that I think foils the intention of the game in the first place. And then nobody's satisfied. Gamers are unsatisfied, and non-gamers are not satisfied. It's tough.
I have a theory that first-person shooter games are very hard to make into a compelling feature. Because
Doom is the world heavyweight champion of bad first-person shooter to movie examples. And
it's just like you're watching somebody else play a video game, and you're not playing the video game, and so it's not satisfying to anybody.
That's why I like the fact that Brian Clark had created a narrative-driven game.
Exactly.
Where it's like you're following Rebecca Owens, and like so as I was playing the game, I was like, is this not watching Clarice Starling solving the crime in Silence of the Lambs? Is this not watching Laurie Strode figuring out how to evade Michael Myers? Like if horror movies are wonderful at pinning audience empathy on a single character in a terrible situation. Will they survive the night? And I thought that the cinematic qualities of the Mortuary Assistant were similar. It's like, okay, I see how you could create a movie out of this. Now, if it were a first-person shooter where she was walking around 10 levels of mortuary shooting demons, I don't know if I would have been able to pull a narrative out of that. And I also don't think all video games should be made into movies. Like I genuinely don't think Doom should have been made into a movie because there's no movie in there.
Right.
It's a brilliant game, and as a game, it was so successful, and as a film, no one was happy. And with Mortuary Assistant, so far it feels like, I mean, there are obviously, I mean, I knew what I was walking into, and I knew some of the people who played the game have their own movie in their minds, and all I can say is like, well, this was my version of Mortuary Assistant with the game creator right next to me. So it's as if we're adapting Dracula, which has been adapted a million times, with many different versions of Dracula, from Christopher Lee to Gary Oldman to Bela Lugosi. All of them are very different Draculas, even though it's archetypally the same story. Personally, I'm a Hammer horror fan of the Dracula. But I felt validated by Brian Clark being with me and saying, yes, I agree, because at least Bram Stoker was next to me doing my Dracula, or Mary Shelley was next to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that made all the difference for me. I wouldn't want to do it any other way, because if the game creator were like, do whatever you want, I would probably feel hesitant and not necessarily want to engage, because what if my perspective is too contrary to what the developer had in mind, and then we might get very far afield from what the fans of the game want. So we had to, I think that Brian also loves movies and is a big cinephile. And he said to me from the beginning, he's like, make a good film, like, let's honor the film as its own unique, awesome piece that is within the world of my game. And then it will never break the rules of my game. And then in an ideal world, it's like people who love the film will go play the game and want to directly experience what Rebecca's going through. And people who love the game can watch the movie and experience like a broader characterization of the Rebecca Owens character that is all based on her backstory and her activities in the game.
Yeah.
Right, because it still has to be a successful movie. It has to be, you have to tell a good story. Yeah. And there's a story here right from the beginning. I mean, we identify with her because who hasn't been in that situation where you got a new job and you want to please, and so when she gets that call, well, we need you to come and work, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to do it. I'm eager, and then oh man, it's going to be all night shift. And
audience empathy is huge for me. It's like whether it's like job interview. I mean, we're not all morticians, but job interview is terrifying. Then we see her do a Narcotics Anonymous thing where she's speaking in front of an audience, and she's a very shy person. So public speaking is scary. And then it's like we're alone at night in the mortuary with the dead. And that is a strange given circumstance. Now, I interviewed a lot of young women who are morticians, and a lot of them had very similar given circumstances to Rebecca Owens. And also, a thing that's very cool about talking to morticians is they love horror movies often. And we're also big fans of the video game. Like a lot of the morticians were like, "Oh, I played that game. I love that."
I've lived it.
Funeral homes have asked us if we were open to doing screenings of the movie, and we are pitching that to Epic Pictures Group. Like before the Shudder release, we're aiming to do at least one in Connecticut, and then there was one in Colorado that was interested. I can't say for sure if we're doing them or not, but I know that. Brian and I are actively trying to make that happen. And John Adams, who acts in the film, is one of the Adams family, also said, hell yeah, I'll go with you to the funeral home. It's like, because it feels like an event, it's one of those things where morticians will come, and then their rock and roll friends will come, and their horror friends will come. And it will feel a lot more like you're at a holistic event, which is something that I'm here for. It's like, I think that, the film festival experience before a theatrical release can do that in several ways. And so I think retroactively we're trying to tap into a certain kind of like homegrown, homespun, let's have a party among the morticians and celebrate the movie vibe. Because I think that's like, it puts us on the fun team,
Oh yeah. No, it sounds awesome.
We don't have the budget to be on the A team, but but we're in the B horror genre, but let's be on the fun team.
That's right.
Let's make it a celebration of everything that we love about the mystery of death and about the Mortuary Assistant in particular.
I think it speaks really highly to the video game and the film itself that morticians would embrace it, because George is in radio, and when we watch a movie set in a radio station where they get radio all wrong, he's like, forget it, and I think it's true. When you're watching your own profession being depicted and they just don't get it right at all, it's very hard to embrace it. So you guys must have done it right.
I hope so. I mean, like we certainly did our utmost to honor the thing. Now I will say that there was like a moment that a mortician did like write to us and say, "Love your film, absolutely extraordinary. You skipped a step here." And and it's like, and
Well, that's why they came back.
It's like I accepted the movie. It's like if I were a lawyer and I were watching a trial movie, I would be like, well, I left out this part, or whatever.
Yeah.
I forgive you because the movie's great, and obviously you do understand all the different steps of mortuary science. It was very cute. That was like, touche, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is. Everything that we're seeing has been great reaction.
Really fun.
But I did see a video that you made that really, I think you have a great attitude about the feedback, where you were saying, look, once it's out there, it's its own thing. And you appreciate all the good, the praise, but somebody comes along and says, oh, it's trash. I mean, you just take it in stride.
Yeah, I mean, well, not more than take it in stride. I think that enjoying all of it is like, I think, part of the experience. Like I decided a long time ago that like, I mean, when I make a movie like Slapface or The Mortuary Assistant, it was completely wholehearted. We really sincerely went in every day with a dedicated crew that loved it as much as we did, and a cast that loved it as much as we did. Shudder and Epic gave us total support. And like all throughout the post-production process, like their notes were generous and kind and enthusiastic about the movie. Shudder even wanted to put it out earlier. Like they were like, "Can you get me done by October? We want to do a Halloween release." And it was just like we wouldn't. It was like, guys, we need every last bit of post-production that we can get. But when somebody doesn't like our movie, like I remember a long time ago, I got a 1.5-star review from a critic who I really like, who'd liked other films of mine. And I read it and I was like, this is a really intelligent take on my film. And this person did not like it, and I was like, well, it's like, I accept it. It's like, at least this guy completely took the movie seriously on its own terms. And then weirdly, this guy gave it gave Mortuary Assistant a 7 out of 10. It's like, I appreciate when people are honest, like, because I'm, as a filmmaker, honesty is my stock and trade. I want to tell the story as honestly as possible. And then when I receive back the reviews from the audience or the critics or whoever, I appreciate the honesty of their response. It's like if people feel the way that they do and can articulate it and explain why, that is all fair game, because like once you finish the movie, it no longer belongs to you. You're sharing it with the world and it belongs to them. And I completely respect that. And when the 3 out of 10 thing happened, I was making merry of it, because I was just like, I really absolutely love when people can get into the spirit of that sort of thing. Like when Paul Verhoeven or Halle Berry went to the Razzies and collected their awards, Halle Berry saying, "Thank you to my manager for like getting me on Catwoman." And I'm so honored, Paul Verhoeven was the best, like every time he gave a great speech, he collected 8 awards and gave a speech for every single one. I was like, I am so happy to be here. I am the very best of the worst. And I friggin' love Paul Verhoeven. I love his films, like I love RoboCop beyond.
Oh, well, yeah.
For years I've said it's my favorite movie, and Total Recall is great. Subverts the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. So for Paul Verhoeven to be such a great artist and show such a sense of humility and sense of humor around people hating showgirls, like he went in and like collected all the awards. And I think the beautiful thing that happened after that was that the queer community kind of took that movie on board and said, we're going to make midnight shows of this. We're going to Rocky Horror this movie. And then it just became a thing, like hating on showgirls kind of eventually turned into like a sort of campy Betty Davis celebration of something that people thought was like, okay, maybe it's not great, but it is so wildly fascinating and fun and entertaining and so on. And I thought Paul Verhoeven, it wasn't just him controlling the narrative. It was him, just approaching life with a certain zest and a certain enthusiasm. Listen, guys, I mean, not every film director gets to have their movie open as wide as The Mortuary Assistant did. Filmmakers who are phenomenally great might play some film festivals and then land on Tubi, and maybe nobody will see their film, So, and those films might be phenomenal, So, like with Mortuary Assistant receiving what it has received, like I never took it for granted that we get it. I didn't even know if we'd get a theatrical run while we were making it. So just to see us out there in movie theaters with people coming and buying a ticket and seeing it, that alone is like such a joy and such a wonderful celebration that the fact that the movie could get out there. And then on March 27th, it will land on Shudder, which I think is the perfect home for our movie because
yeah.
I mean, I love Shudder, right?
Me too.
They program such an eclectic range of interesting movies. So if you want to see someone get splattered spectacularly every 7 minutes, you can see that. And if you want to watch an Argentinian art house psychodrome, like you can tune into that. Like the first movie I had on Shudder played, it was like February 2022. So it was Slapface, played the same month as the Addams Family film Hellbender.
Oh yeah,
I think it's one of the best horror films.
Oh, it's great.
10 years.
Great.
Yeah.
As great as like Phantasm or something.
Yeah.
And that's why I met John Adams, who is in the Mortuary Assistant.
Yeah. He's great too. I remember thinking that, when you got her backstory, and it was, because he is such a great choice for a sad, loving dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's also such a great choice for something much more menacing than that. And for it to all be the same character, I thought it was perfect casting.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the two sides of the John Adams coin. Like he is so remarkable at being the warm father because he is that to his children.
Well, you can see right now in Mother of Flies.
Mother of Flies, he gives this like tremendously empathetic performance as Zelda's dad. Is a father-daughter story in many ways, when they meet a witch. And then, he, the rock and roll demon, the punk rock anarchy, like he can easily do that. And he was scaring people on the set too with his performance. Like he would do shit that would like make people, like the DP like looked at me like, ugh. John seems like such a nice guy, and if Tom Hanks is America's dad, then surely John Adams is the dad of horror. I love John so much, and I would work with him anytime.
Yeah, he was really great. And you brought up Slapface a couple times, and I would love to just give that a plug and make sure if anybody hasn't seen it, and it's still on Shudder right now.
It's still on Shudder, yeah.
It's a remarkable movie, and it covers, I think, a topic that the rare occasion where you just don't see that in horror in the way that you cover it. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful movie.
Oh, that makes me happy to hear. Well, if you want to do a triple bill of like children in adult peril, then I'd say like maybe start your evening with Phantasm, the great Don Coscarelli movie, which is a child dealing against like bizarro land supernatural aliens.
And one of the greatest villains of all time.
The Tall Man is the greatest villain of all time. Then hit Slapface for a little social realism horror, with a little boy and a 10-foot tall witch, and mayhem ensues as a result of their friendship. And then finally, you can cap it with Wes Craven's classic, The People Under the Stairs, which also is a child protagonist entering a dangerous adult world that is beyond. In suburbia, if you crawl under the lattices and like go into the basement of the suburban house, you will find infinite madness. So Phantasm, Slapface, and then People Under the Stairs, you'll have a hell of a time.
You're curating a film festival there before we know it.
I love movies. It's like it was one of the things that like Brian Clark and I both bonded on was our enthusiasm for cinema. So we could make cinematic references to each other, and know what we were talking about. And the fact that that Brian and I could talk about movies we love in reference to what we wanted to do on the Mortuary Assistant, it was very good for our producers and our director of photography and production designer and everyone, because we could show them exactly what we were talking about and what we wanted to do. Sure. And then also speak to the emotional underpinnings under those things. So it wasn't just going to be ripping off a cool shot from another movie. It was going to be like, this is the story that we want to tell that needs to work independently in its own right.
Well, I know this ride just started, but congratulations on all the success so far. We certainly recommend it. It's a blast, and I think as more people see it, the word of mouth is just going to be positive and keep it rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that people see it, and I hope they encourage their friends. It is indie horror, so like it's one of those where if you like it, then tell your friends, and you can find scope it out on AMC or Regal or Fandango or the places to look. But if during the theatrical run you have trouble with it, then Shudder is March 27th, and that's going to be in all English-speaking territories from America to the UK to Canada to Australia. And then after that, it will gradually, I know it's pre-sold to other territories, so around the world, other people will be able to see it as the months progress.
I think the fact that it had so many sellout and near sellout theaters on Valentine's weekend with so many, Nothing came out last weekend. Nothing worth watching came out last weekend. Nothing. This weekend, you got
I know. You know, we were looking at the lineup and being like, "Wow, there's a lot of good choices."
Yeah,
there really are
a lot. And the fact that so many people chose to see yours instead of Wuthering Heights or Sam Rockwell or that's
Crime 101.
Crime 101.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm deeply grateful, but I do believe that that is like how horror, like indie horror community and indie gaming community is very, very, very supportive. You know. So, like it really means a lot to me. Like people just come out of the woodwork to give you a pat on the back and say, "Good job, keep going." Like recently, like John McNaughton, director of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, just gave a pat on the back, and it was just like,
wow,
that felt very validating. Just because Henry is such a great movie,
classic.
And it's like, I mean, it just saying he likes the movie doesn't really do anything for ticket sales per se, but for me personally, it's like it feels validating because it's like, oh, one of the great filmmakers who paved the way for the rest of us is is saying good job, or like thumbs up or whatever. It means something, and it's the hope that we can all be able to do that down the line as we continue. It's like we're all in this together, and and like these movies and these games live or die based on the love and the support of their fans, and we hope not to let down our fans, both in the horror film world and the horror gaming world. And I know that you're always threading a needle and you never know what people will say, but like all you can do is approach it wholeheartedly and say that I really love this movie, and Brian Clark really loves this movie. So, we present it to you and we hope that everybody feels the same way. It belongs to them now.
Yeah, no, you got a good one.
Yeah.
So congratulations. Well done. We can't thank you enough for a few minutes today.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure. It's always nice talking to you.
Great to see you again, and best of luck continued on the film and future projects. And until next time, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club podcast. Stay frightful, my friends. Thank you,
Thank
Jeremiah
you, Jeremiah Kipp.
Thank you, guys.